Yes, there is some particular reason to be concerned about the health impacts of black plastics used as food utensils or food packaging, also children's toys, anything that goes into the mouth. This is not new news, but there was a new study that came out about this, that came out in October, that a lot of people are worried about. And it should have people worried, in my humble opinion. However, there's nothing here to freak out about yet. The dose makes the poison, and the very slim amount of evidence that we have so far suggests that the level of practical human exposure that you could expect to get from interacting with products like this, it might not really be within the range where you would expect to see effects on human health, or it's just kind of barely cracking into that range at the most extreme way that you could look at the numbers. So let's talk about why black plastic in particular is a concern. Black plastic is usually made black by the addition of something called carbon black, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a couple of chemicals that you get by burning stuff that are particularly good as product dyes. And black plastic is really, really popular in food items for a couple of reasons. One, I think probably it's just sort of a product marketing thing. You know, black doesn't show smears of food as unattractively as lighter colors do. The other thing is that the carbon black coloring agent actually has some practical effects on the performance of the product. It makes the plastic a little bit more heat resistant. So that's one potential reason why they might use black plastic in things like plastic microwave trays for food. Black plastic represents, they think, about 15% of the total plastic supply. And the problem with it is that it's not easy to recycle. Most of the automated plastic recycling plants that are working in the countries that are within the sound of my voice right now, they work using an infrared technology to see how infrared waves pass through plastic. And based upon how those waves pass through the plastic, they can tell what particular kind of plastic it is, and therefore a machine can kind of pull out that particular item and sort it to its appropriate bin at the recycling plant. The problem with black plastic is that it's not reflective of light. That's why it's black. And so an infrared sensor doesn't work very well for determining what kind of plastic it is. And so what's most likely to happen is that it won't be identified as plastic at all. It'll just keep on rolling down the line and eventually end up in a landfill. And so there's sort of a dearth of recycled black plastic available for the makers of black plastic products. What to do? You look to recycled electronics, things like phones, computers, TVs, the old stuff that came in big black boxes like the VCRs and the DVD players and all of that kind of stuff. If you look on a lot of those products, especially ones that have been made since the early 2000s, what you'll see is a little logo that looks like this. That's telling you, no, do not throw this old DVD player into the trash or what have you. You need to do something else with it. I don't know. In the US, it isn't really well communicated. In Europe, where this symbol comes from, it comes from an EU regulation, they have a better system for incentivizing people to dispose of their old electronics at designated facilities where they will then be broken down. Why do you need to take your electronics to a special facility to be broken down instead of just sending it to the landfill or to the recycling plant, which would be even worse? Well, because electronics tend to have other things in them that are not so good for other products. Specifically, like black electronics casings or wire coatings tend to have flame retardants mixed in with them for obvious reasons. These are things you don't want getting hot and catching fire. And so you mix in a pretty high volume of flame retardants of various kinds in with this black plastic to keep the TV from catching fire when it ever overheats if it malfunctions. Makes a lot of sense. The problem is flame retardants tend to cause all kinds of terrible health problems in animals when we are exposed to them. Cancer, neurotoxicity, that kind of thing. So this creates a problem in the world of plastic recycling known as waste electronic and electrical equipment. It's literally known as WEEE. So we can and cannot be recycled depending on the particular kind of we that you got there. And generally the components are supposed to be labeled with different little codes that tell you whether or not something can be recycled, and sometimes those components are not labeled properly. And you end up with a situation where black plastics with very, very high percentages of flame retardants in them, even though they're not supposed to get recycled into consumer products, evidently they are getting recycled into consumer products. And we know this because some scientists have done some sample testing. You know, it can sometimes feel as though everything that we humans have created in this world is coming back to try to kill us. And maybe that's for the best. Maybe we deserve it. But at least there are a few human creations out there that are trying to help us live longer, healthier, happier lives. And one of those is Grüns, the sponsor of this video. Let me thank the Grüns people real quick. Grüns is this fantastic, well, is it a multivitamin? No. Is it a greens gummy? No. Is it a probiotic? No. It is all of those things and more wrapped up in one little fruit snack supplement. Delightful little fruit snack that you just eat every day. There's 8 gummies in here. Same great nutrients and same great taste, even though they have redesigned the packaging. They want you to know that it's still the same delicious thing. And yeah, so you got 100% of a whole lot of vitamins and minerals that everybody needs, and then 25% of vitamins and minerals that everybody needs, but they can potentially be hazardous in very high doses, and so the Grüns folks are sensible and include them in lower doses in their product here. Yeah, you just eat all 8, 1 package a day. And if you're somebody who doesn't really like to do like a powderized drink, or you have trouble swallowing big pills, I really, really think this is an excellent option for you. They're vegan, and made with pectin instead of gelatin, real cane sugar, just 3 grams of added sugar, though there is a sugar-free option available to you should you require it. You know, natural flavors, citric acid, real simple, nothing that people are likely to be sensitive to. And it turns taking your vitamins into an absolute delight. Your vitamins and your probiotics and your greens. Oh, and beneficial mushrooms too. The B vitamins are methylated, which is something that they do to make it more bioavailable to the substantial minority of the population that has a particular genetic mutation that makes it impossible for them to, or makes it very difficult for them to absorb B12 folate unless it's been methylated, which is something they do. They think a lot at Grüns about bioavailability, and I really appreciate that. And I really, really appreciate that you can save up to 45% off of your Grüns order by using my link in the description right now. Save up to 45% on Grüns with my link in the description. Thank you, Grüns. Anyway, the reason black plastic has been in the news lately is that a new study came out in October. It was authored primarily by some folks at a nonprofit in Seattle, Washington called Toxic Free Future. So yes, it's an environmental nonprofit is the one coming out with this research, but it's a mainstream one. I don't see any particular concerns with who their funders are or anything like that. And since we know from prior research that like the oral route is very effective for getting these kinds of fire retardants into your body, what they did was they tested items, particular products that could potentially get into people's mouths, either as being used as cooking implements like that slotted turner, or these kids' toys, pirate coin medallion beads. That was a particularly bad one. Look at this. That is the highest concentration of fire retardants that they observed in any black plastic that they studied here. Pretty soon after that, though, is the sushi tray. Wow, really high concentration in the disposable black sushi tray. That's a concerning finding. But the problem with this kind of public health research is that to a certain extent, when you go looking for bad things in your environment, you're almost certainly going to find them anywhere you go looking for them. Like that microplastic study we talked about a few weeks ago. Lots of people hearing about the extent to which a plastic cutting board introduces microplastics into your food because a scientist went and looked for it and found it. And that's a meaningful finding and important to know about, but on the other hand, like every place they go looking for microplastics, they find them everywhere. Like your dishwasher is full of microplastics. They think chiefly because of those little dishwashing pods that are wrapped in a very thin layer of dissolvable plastic, right? Like that just gets onto your dishes. There's a residue of microplastic just in there. Everywhere they go looking for microplastics, they find them because we humans have introduced them into our environment, chiefly the water, and they're just ubiquitous everywhere. But we know from prior research cited by these scientists here that heat causes the migration of these fire retardants out of black plastic, and cooking utensils and food serving platters. These are things that are going to get hot in the presence of solvents, things filled with water and fats that can help to dissolve materials out of the plastic, and then it's going to end up in our mouths, right? So it's a reasonable thing to be concerned about and to do some investigation into. And so these scientists in this new study that came out in October figured out that by using a particular black plastic spoon, you could estimate a daily intake of 34,700 nanograms per day of this one particular fire retardant, BDE-209. 34,000 nanograms from using the spoon and getting it in the hot oil, and that's the kind of thing that they're working into their calculation there as they estimate that. So is 34,000 a lot? Well, compare it to some other things like other research that they cite here indicates that you're just breathing about 250 nanograms of this particular fire retardant into your lungs every day from dust that is created by all of the household items that are in your home, which includes the electronics. The fire retardants come up off the electronics and you breathe them in. So that's 250 nanograms per day breathing in compared to what? 34,000 a day that you would consume through using that particular black plastic spoon. So that kind of makes 34,000 sound like a lot, right? Well, according to this study from Toxic Free Future, that 34,000 extra nanograms of fire retardant you would get a day from using that spoon, that is just below what they call the reference dose for that particular fire retardant. The reference dose is what U.S. environmental officials consider to be like the minimum acceptable daily oral dose of some potential toxin, okay? Reference dose is usually very conservative, the way that they've worked it out, and often based upon mostly like rodent studies where they have exposed mice to particularly high doses of these potential toxins, but it's a very conservative marker. So if we take this article at its word, on its face, what it's telling us is that the daily exposure you would get from using that particular spoon would be knocking at the door of the sort of minimum acceptable oral dose according to U.S. environmental officials for that particular fire retardant. However, I don't know if I want to say this, but there seems to just be a basic arithmetic error in here, and I'm totally open to the possibility that I'm the idiot and I'm seeing it wrong. They looked up and saw that the reference dose for this particular fire retardant was 7,000 nanograms per kilogram of body weight per day, and so they multiplied 7,000 times 60, a 60 kilogram adult, typical, right? So 7,000 times 60, they figured 42,000 nanograms per day is the daily reference dose according to U.S. environmental officials. The problem is 60 times 7,000 is not 42,000. It's 420,000, right? They're 10 times off. Please, somebody check me on that. I've actually emailed the authors of this paper about that, but as near as I can tell, that's just a mistake that they have made. So if that's true, what that tells us is that this hypothetical daily exposure from using the black plastic spoon is actually maybe 1/10 of the reference dose, as opposed to almost being the reference dose itself. But to a certain extent, it doesn't even matter because the reference dose is looking at non-cancer risks associated with a particular toxin. There's also cancer risks associated with these particular toxins, these fire retardants. And, the extent to which a particular product contributes to your lifetime increased risk of getting a particular cancer, it's a really, really difficult thing to calculate, but I'm glad that there's people looking into it and raising concerns. And I won't be surprised if you start to see, especially kind of higher end food makers, maybe the sushi makers will start backing away from the black plastic trays just in response to public pressure around this. And maybe that's a good thing. I mean, we have a particular reason to be worried about the black plastic. I don't know if we have any particular reason to think that the replacements for the black plastic would be any better. But I think we should make an exercise out of not freaking out about this, not freaking out about the presence of potentially harmful chemicals in our black food plastics, not freaking out about maybe a decimal place being in the wrong spot in a piece of peer-reviewed scientific literature. These are the kinds of things that happen, okay? And part of being an adult is thinking about yourself as a full participant in the society around you, right? Like, these are not things that happen to me. Like, I choose to buy products from companies who put fire retardants into those products because I don't want my television bursting into flames, which is an actual risk, right? I would take some chronic health risks associated with fire retardants over a fire any day, right? I would say that, like, you know, if you have one of these in your pantry and it's, you know, I would probably replace it, yeah. I will say, however, that like from an environmental sustainability perspective, throwing things away is almost never the right choice. Right? Just throwing this into the ground, right, isn't going to protect the planet from it. It's just going to protect you, which is worth considering. I think that you matter. But if what you're worried about is like the planet, then generally the best advice is like use the tools that you have until you can use them no more before you bring new things into this world.